It's very
most
good at
situations. Or Jund deck is like the Mario. I don't know. That's somehow
one of them is the other.
Yeah, it works both ways. That's how I look at Jund a lot in these kind of formats.
Right. So. One of the best things Jund can do is cast a turn 2 Farseek. Especially Gary's deck doesn't even have access to Arboro.
So we're going to see if Gary can pull that off here. This is his turn 2. We've seen already Brad lead off with the Champion of the Parish, and Gary does not have the Farseek on turn 2.
No, it looks like Gary does have the Abrupt Decay in his hand. So he is, one of the things that Jund wants to do, I think, is to just control his Nibless deck, is that he wants to have as many removal spells as possible, and then hopefully come up with a follow-up card like Olivia Voldaren, Huntmaster of the Fells, or even Garruk Primal Hunter.
Yeah, so he does actually have a play here, and you see the Champion getting leveled, and I believe we're going to see an Abrupt Decay.
Right. Well, he has that choice.
Mayor of Averbrook there.
Interestingly enough, he chooses to Abrupt Decay the Champion of the Parish instead of the Mayor of Averbrook, which to me tells me, he's planning on playing another spell this turn. So he really can't have the Mayor flip. We do see
he's got a Dreadbore.
Yeah, a lot of good removal in his hand. He has a Putrefy, a Dreadbore, a Bonfire of the Damned. Gary's going to have plenty of ways to kill all the creatures, but he doesn't cast anything main phase.
Yeah, he lets the Mayor flip there.
Yeah, I think he was planning as far as to be good on his mana. He was planning to Putrefy there.
Right, but he should have done it.
Well, it doesn't actually matter if he's committed to the Putrefy line. It doesn't really matter when he does it.
So you see him clear the board there with a Putrefy and a Boros. Is it Frontline Medic? Sorry, yeah. Boros Elite and Frontline Medic look similar.
Right, and he's actually not running. Brad's not running Boros Reckoner today. He's running 3 Gore Clan Rampagers, 3 Hell Riders, which is why he was calling it a big blitz deck.
Right.
One of the things by not playing his Bonfire here, Gary's. I think he's hoping to get a 2-for-1 out of that Bonfire, which later in the game may be a little difficult, but he still has plenty of removal. He has a Thragtusk, he has a Huntmaster in his hand. He does not seem to have another land.
No, he's missed his 4th land drop, passes back to Brad. Brad's going to add to his board state here with a Burning Tree Shaman and I'm sorry, Burning Tree Emissary.
Yeah, Burning Tree.
Not Burning Tree Shaman.
Yeah, Emissary and Lightning Mauler. So now Brad finally gets some damage, and that's going to be 7 damage. He's a little behind on his damage right now, so he's got to be pretty happy he's finally gotten to crack into Gary's life total. Without the land here, Gary's only going to get to play 1 removal spell per turn. His life total is going to get pretty low. Yeah,
Gary missing that land drop has been a pretty big point for Brad. Gary now going to deal with the Frontline Medic using that Dreadbore that we saw, but he still does not have that land drop, and so he passes back with just 1 mana open. And now Flinthoof Boar joining the team, Lightning Mauler, Emissary, all coming in. Gonna take a huge chunk out of Gary's
another 7 damage. That Flinthoof Boar is an excellent draw for Brad. That'll put Gary down to 6. Gary does finally hit his 4th land, so I think he's going to be able to start to try to stabilize. He has this Huntmaster of the Fells. That should buy him enough time that if he draws another land, he'll be able to cast his Thragtusk.
Yeah, and that's what we're going to see here. 4 mana and Huntmaster. So 2 blockers, 2 life, and likely a couple extra turns for Gary.
Yeah, because his life total is so low, I don't think he can play the game. Huntmaster can sometimes end this matchup by flipping. I don't think Gary really is going to have time to do that. We're probably going to see him just use both these creatures to buy life points.
I agree. Yeah, it's just he needs to buy time at this point. We'll see what he decides to do. Brad's going to go ahead and swing in with all 3 of his guys. It looks like Gary's going to try to flip the Huntmaster.
Yeah,
he puts the wolf in front of the Lightning Mauler and does not block Flinthoof Boar or Burning Tree Emissary.
Yep, and this is Brad hitting another land. It's pretty unfortunate. That would have flipped Huntmaster, as neither player actually cast a spell there. I think Gary missed that trigger.
I was just going to say, I think he was hoping to flip Huntmaster, but completely skipped it.
Yeah, and it looks like he drew a Bonfire, possibly.
Okay, so now he's gonna. This time he's not gonna miss it. He's just gonna pass the turn, flipping the Huntmaster, killing the Burning Tree Emissary.
And that still may be good enough. Right now, Gary has a 4/4 and untapped mana to Brad's 3/3. And Experiment 1, not really enough. Brad needs just some way to push through 3 more damage. He's really got to hope that Gary doesn't draw another land if Gary resolves this Thragtusk, or even if Gary's able to flip his own Huntmaster back. This game's going to get really difficult.
And we've got a Farseek here from Gary, so Brad's got a little more of a window before that Thragtusk comes down.
Yeah. Interestingly enough, I think the heads-up play here would be to Farseek and Rakdos return for 0 right now.
Just to flip
Huntmaster, because you have to think if you're Gary, next turn, once you untap in Thragtusk, the game is over. Right? You have so much life that I think it's not like Rakdos return actually does anything here.
Yeah.
So I think it actually would return for 0.
Yeah, that's a play that I don't think a lot of people, I mean, unless he is really zeroing in on flipping that Huntmaster, I don't think a lot of people would think to waste.
Well, you
a card
typically
like
don't.
that.
You typically don't Rakdos return for X equals 0.
Exactly right. You're not going to think about it. So of course, that's not what Gary decided to do. He passes the turn with 2 mana up. Brad plays another copy of Burning Tree Emissary and passes back without attacking. But then Huntmaster stays as a Ravager, and Gary now lands that Thragtusk. So things are looking up for Gary now.
Yeah, Brad's only able to push 2 damage through because of how many creatures he has. He has 3 lands in play. An 8-land hand for Blitz is really hard to work with.
You mean 3 lands in hand? Is that
yeah,
what
3
okay.
yes, 3 lands. An
hand,
8-land game. I guess.
Right.
You know, Brad only plays. He only plays 22 lands, so 8. We're already over a third of the lands in his deck.
Gary's got another big one for us, and it is a Thundermaw Hellkite. Hellkite's going to swing in by itself and knock Brad down to 11 here.
Yep, and a really good conservative play by Gary. He doesn't need to push damage that quickly, and I like how he's leaving back 2 blockers just to take away the possibility of an out.
Frontline Medic for Brad levels the Experiment 1, and Brad passes back.
Yeah, it's a pretty good draw. Brad wishes he could have had it a turn earlier. Because this actually does give him the ability to swing into Gary's team, but unfortunately right now the counter swing is lethal to Brad, so he has to make sure that when this swing happens that it really counts.
Yeah. Alright, so Gary on 8 life, Brad Nelson on 11 life, and Gary's going to swing in here. Looks like he's going to swing in here with the Thundermaw. Oh, he's reconsidering that play. He has a bonfire in hand. Looks like he's considering.
He does have enough to bonfire for 3 here, which is, he hit his 7th land. This is going to be pretty strong on Brad's board of all 3 toughness guys.
And bonfire.
And Brad's
of course, counter it,
counters it.
Right. So it's a way to deal with the frontline medic essentially. And Gary's going to go ahead and swing in with the Thundermaw Hellkite. So
and Brad's pounding the top of his deck. I think he's looking for Hellrider, I believe.
He found something red.
He found Lightning Mauler.
Not quite the Hellrider we were looking for.
Yeah, were he to hit the Hellrider there, he'd have 4. That would actually be lethal on this board. It'd be 4 damage on the attack plus 2 so it's 2 unblocked guys is at least 4 more, so that would be 8. Lightning Mauler is he did hit a red haster, but the wrong one.
Yeah. How many? He has 3 Hellriders. Yeah. So.
Interestingly enough.
Yeah.
He opts to scoop them. He is at 6. It's not definite. It's not definite that he's dead here.
Right, but I can see
he's probably dead.
Yeah, it's likely, but not definite. Well, he's definitely dead if he scoops him up like he just did. So, Gary with game 1 with his Jund deck, and despite stumbling on his 4th land drop, is able to stabilize just in time. Was at one point down to 3 life.
Yeah, all down to 3 life. Brad, the Nihilist deck, unable to deal those final points, and I think that's one of the things we see in Nihilist is that it's late, really after turn 4 the deck starts getting pretty weak. By playing Hellriders, Brad is addressing this issue, but even so, that's only 3 cards in his deck.
Yeah, and he didn't see any there, so playing the Hellrider for that exact situation is nice and all, but when you don't have it, you don't have it. So
exactly.
I'm gonna take a guess and say Gary is a local player to Philadelphia, judging on his based off his Philadelphia Eagles hat there. Unless he just wants to represent he's like, I'm going to Philadelphia, I'm going to wear an Eagles hat.
Yeah.
I mean, that's fair, too. I mean, Cedric was wearing an Orioles hat when he did commentary in Baltimore, so that works.
So when we look at the sideboard for this matchup, I think what Brad's going to try to do in the matchup is just get around the fact that Jund has a lot of removal. Like I said, Jund doesn't have any great draws, it has a lot of good draws, and that was actually a very good draw for Gary. He had enough removal spells to shut down Naya Blitz, and actually was able to still win the game despite missing his 4th land on 2 consecutive turns. What Brad will be using then is Domery Rod to try to out-resource the removal spells that Jund brings in.
Yeah, and on Gary's side, he's got a load more of removal that he can bring in, and cheaper removal at that. He's got 2 copies of Tragic Slip, 2 copies of Pillar of Flame. He's got 1 Barter in Blood, which is not cheaper removal, but it's something he may bring in if he's got the space. But it's a questionable.
I have to imagine he would bring in Barter in Blood. It's a 2-for-1, which so sometimes it does count as 2 removal spells. I would say if Gary in his opening hand has 3 removal spells and the lands to cast them all, he's probably a favorite in this game. And Barter is removal spells 1 and 2.
Yeah, Barter about as good as a Huntmaster in a lot of situations when you're going to be, you have the 4 mana and can take out 2 guys. And then he's got an additional Dreadbore in there, which of course I think he would like in the case of a Dom Reroute, and also of course it's creature removal.
Yeah, I mean
it's not going to be dead.
Yeah, there's a very low investment on playing Dreadbore. It's about as good as any of the other kill spells you play, and on top of it, it addresses a Dom Reroute if he suspects Brad boards one in.
Yeah. What do you think about Putrefy? He's got 1 in the main, 1 in the board. It is a 1-for-1, but it costs 3 mana. Do you feel like you just need it just because there's just going to be so much?
I think you have to start counting your slots. Gary wants to have as much removal as possible in dealing with Nihilblitz. There's a lot of cards that are not very good here. I would say Thundermaw Hellkite, Sire of Insanity, Rakdos Return, Rakdos Keyrune, Garruk Primal Hunter, and even to a certain level, Farseek's not great in this matchup. You don't always have time to cast it.
Spending a turn.
Yeah, I don't mean turn 2. No jokes. That Jun loves to have a turn 2 Farseek. In this matchup, you'd much rather have a turn 2 Dreadbore than a turn 2 Farseek.
Yeah.
So any number of those cards could come out, and I think Putrefy is not the first removal spell I want to bring in, but it may still be good enough.
Looks like double Farseek in Gary's opener, along with a Putrefy, an Abrupt Decay, and an Olivia, and a Huntmaster.
Yeah, just a single land. I think we're going to. I think he's going to end up shipping that one back.
Yeah, unless he wants to gamble.
And Brad with I see an Experiment 1 and a Burning Tree Emissary and some lands. Brad he's on the play. You have to assume he's keeping that.
Yeah, it looks like Brad's keeping. Gary's going to go ahead and go to 6, which as we suspected. I mean, nice collection of cards there, but yeah, the double Farseek, just 1 land, not gonna give him much action on turn 2. So going to 6. So you still feel like Brad has the edge here, or do you feel like now after board?
Well, post board, I would say in any given game, I still want to be the Naya Blitz deck.
Okay.
But I think. If you're to play 2 games of post-board Naya Blitz versus Jun, you have to think Jun's going to get one of them.
Yeah.
This game's looking pretty hard is looking like it's very much in Brad's favor right now.
Just because of his opener. Yeah.
Because he has such a good opener, and Wilkinson's going down to 5 cards.
Oh yeah, well that would be another reason.
Right. So you can't think there are very few hands that Gary can have here that'll let him compete with the explosiveness of Brad's draw. He'll need to find ways to 2-for-1. Unfortunately, what we said is that while his deck has a lot of removal, it has very few 2-for-1 removal spells. That was why Barter and Blood was so good.
Right,
why Liliana of the Veil can possibly be good. The thing is, he needs to answer enough threats from Brad and he needs to answer threats from Brad until he gets a card like Huntmaster or Thragtusk down. And the 5 cards is just really hard to do that. He's gonna have to hope that Brad, if Brad floods out, he can capitalize on that.
Right. Well, we're underway. Gary keeps his 5. Brad leads off with a Rootbound Crag. Gary plays his turn 1 Blood Crypt. Both players with a tapped land. And Experiment 1, Clifftop Retreat.
Yeah, so interesting enough, Brad does have the Cavern of Souls, but he's elected to play a little bit of a slower game. He has a second Experiment 1, and he has a Burning Tree Emissary in his hand.
So Gary with another Shockland tapped, passes back to Brad. Brad going to play Experiment 1 number 2 and likely level them both here.
Yep, and here's where you get a really good draw. He's going to have Burning Tree Emissary into Flint before.
Yeah.
And now he's placed 11 power on the board on turn 3.
So both guys getting leveled, and 1 Experiment 1 getting in there for 3. Gary down to 17. Gary now.
Yeah, Brad had them on a 2-turn clock. Gary just playing his first creature here.
And he kept the Keyrune in, which feels a little slow to me, but that's...
Well, what Rakdos Keyrune, I think what he's thinking here is he's playing for the fact that Rakdos Keyrune is a card that can close the late game in a lot of ways. Because it is a 3-1 first strike, it's able to block and kill a lot of the cards that Brad plays.
Sure, but I think at this point he's overwhelmed. The frontline medic comes down for Brad, and Gary now, he's going to have the option of well, I was going to say he's going to have the option of using that key rune, but
Yeah.
he's going to use it for mana. He's going to play a Thrag Tusk.
And Brad's showing him, even if you block here, this is still lethal. You can block the 3.
Yeah.
And we'll be moving on to game 3.
Game over. Thrag Tusk or no. So not quite enough. Like you said, Brad had that explosive opening hand, and despite even playing it a little slower than you might expect, he's able to easily overwhelm Gary through a Thrag Tusk.
Yeah. So that's one of the dangers of cards like Rakdos Keyrune. And when he said earlier that you often don't have time to play them. As we saw, Gary had a turn 4 Thrag Tusk on the draw, and he, despite the fact that he cast it, he was dead upon casting it. So really, when he looks at his hand, he's going to have to think about, what am I doing turn 1? What am I doing turn 2? What am I doing turn 3? And beyond that, you can't even really plan for turns beyond that, because if the answers to those first 3 questions aren't good enough, then turn 4 just doesn't matter.
Right, he essentially did nothing on turns 1, 2. He traded his first 3 turns to have the Thrag Tusk on the 4th turn instead of the 5th turn, but that wasn't.
Obviously, you don't get great options when you have a 5-card hand. So, maybe that's the best option he can keep. But I would say turn 4 Thrag Tusk is one of the best turn 4s that Jund can make. In this matchup, it's about as good. Turn 4 Thrag Tusk and turn 4 Olivia are probably the best turn 4s he can have. So really, what this tells me is that he needs to care about turns 1 through 3. Those are going to be more important to him.
Yeah, I don't know. I think Keyrune was one of the first cards I thought about taking out after Rakdos' return. But it seems like the Keyrune is like a bad Farseek, and until it's the late game, and you're just hoping to get to the late game against this deck. So anyway, we've got game 3 underway. Experiment 1 for Brad Nelson. Gary on turn 2 has a Rootbound Crag coming into play untapped, and he has a Pillar of Flame to deal with that Experiment 1. So
so there we go. Our turn 2, how many removal spells does he have? What can he do on those first few turns? Those are really important questions to Gary, and as we saw on turn 2, he did exactly what he wanted to do, which was just to keep pace with Brad.
Right. Burning Tree Emissary, with Experiment 1 for Brad Nelson, and Gary's going to play a second Forest.
Yeah, the second removal spell he has, the other 2 removal spells he have are Tragic Slip and Putrefy. He tragically does not have a black mana source. He does have also an Olivia and Thrag Tusk in hand.
So Frontline Medic for Brad, and Experiment 1 levels. Emissary and Experiment 1 getting in. Unfortunately
for Gary, he draws this black source on turn 4. Like I said before, his hand's really only as good as the first few turns. It seems like it was a calculated risk that he took when he kept the hand without black in it. He did finally get there, but he's going to have to pay 2 life for it, and still he's facing a lot of damage.
Right. So he's going to go ahead and play that Blood Crypt, take 2.
Yeah, 2 damage now is not preferred against Niblets, but certainly is better than the damage you take by not killing something.
Exactly.
And I think we'll see a Putrefy on Frontline Medic. That to me seems like the way that Gary gains the most life right now.
Exactly, it's going to save him the most life. So
yeah, he's going to decide to instant speed it instead, which is fine, as long as he doesn't let that trigger resolve.
He's got to worry about waiting a little too long to trigger that.
Yeah. And that's a pretty heads-up play, because Brad's going to Hell Rider here, so he's going to save himself a lot of life points by waiting on that Putrefy.
Right, so before attackers are declared, we should... okay, so Experiment 1 levels. Now he's going to cast a Putrefy on the Hell Rider. He's going to...
Right, so that did save him 3 life by waiting there. Unfortunately, he's still taking a lot of damage. He's down to 6.
He's dealt with, the fresh threat, but he's still dealing with everything else that Brad has. And a Miracle Bonfire.
Yeah, Timely Bonfire. He's going to do it. Right, so he's miracling it here. It's going to just be a kill spell for Frontline Medic.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, he's going to he has to tap out here. I mean...
Yeah, well, yeah, he can either do it for 2. I mean, I think he has to do it for 3.
Right. He has to do it for 3, because otherwise it's like Brad's
I think what he's trying to do is he miracled it, and now he's choosing not to play it. I think what he wanted to do was do a bonfire for 2, and then Tragic Slip a guy on top of that, which I actually like as a play, and I don't know why he decided against the play, and I'm not sure why. I think that's the only way he actually could have played 2 kill spells in 1 turn. By miracling it. It may be that because he let the card touch his hand that they didn't actually allow him to miracle it. Remember how he grabbed the card, put it in... I do believe if he,
I didn't see it, but I mean,
yeah, I mean, if with Miracles, if you even let that card touch another card in your hand, at that point it's considered part of your hand, and you're no longer allowed to miracle it.
Okay, might have been a situation like that then. Either way, no miracle bonfire there, and Gary's going to choose to do something different here. He's going to play an Olivia Voldaren.
And yeah, Brad has
Brad
two more
says,
humans
"I'm
with
just
haste. Doesn't actually matter what would have happened there. He was Gary, even with the play of Bonfire Tragic Flip, was taking 6 there.
Yeah. So Gary unable to muster enough of a defense against Brad Nelson's big blitz. And I believe we've got a Drew Levin on the back table there. You can kind of see him